The story of this game changed about 3 separate times during the evening in Madison, Wisconsin. But what it is Penn State found a way to win through extreme adversity. Their snake bit injuries continue in 2024 with multiple, not just players, not just starters, but key players going down in the game, and yet the Nittany Lions still find a way to win. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. They are 7-0, undefeated, and heading into the game that everyone wants to talk about later. Here's the deal. We're going to talk about Wisconsin. I know the whiteout game is coming up. I know that Ohio State is next weekend. We're talking about Wisconsin for at least 55 of the 60 minutes we're going to be on air today. Sean Fitz, publisher of BWI.illustrated.com, is with me as well to take you through what we saw during the game. I'll give some analysis of some plays, but really it comes down to what we just talked about. And I want to get your thoughts on how you thought the team responded in that second half after all those injuries right before halftime. Fits.
You know, I wrote after the UCLA game that this team had not dealt with adversity just because it hadn't been handed their way. And I kind of regret it because the last 2 games, I could really go without some of that adversity. But Penn State was able to do a good job of adjusting on the fly. Obviously, things don't happen in a click. You see that, right? You replace a right tackle. It's going to be a process. You replace a quarterback. It's going to be a bigger process. Penn State was able to get through and complement the pieces that needed to be, I would say, softened a little bit before you got into what you could actually do with those guys. So a lot of credit to the defense. Obviously, that pick 6 from Jaylen Reed. Jaylen Reed was fantastic and very necessary at that point. But a lot of stepping up in the face of adversity. And, you know, when you go on the road in the Big Ten in October, that's what you want to see. And that's what you got. And, you know, this one ended up a lot more comfortable than I think a lot of people were feeling at halftime.
I think I said it to somebody. I'm like, this feels like an L after the offense came out. Bo Prabula puts the ball on the ground on a mesh and they have to punt. Penn State has been very good at least getting a field goal and usually scoring coming out of halftime with the offense. You expected the defense to play well in that second half. They did. Once again, essentially pitching a shutout. They give up a field goal, one big play that kind of changes one drive. But that was a huge turnaround for the quarterback to get his legs underneath him and to make those plays. It was what I said in BlueWhiteIllustrated.com on the message board thread was you're finally going to get to see Andy Kotelnicki's full run game. The quarterback, the option, playing those athletes off one another. And I think they did a lot of things that protected the offensive line, which I'm going to be honest with you, Fitz was struggling to consistently open up gaps in between the tackles. Anthony Donko's injury has been a serious dampening force on that offensive line. Not to say Nolan Rucci is bad, not to say that he is playing poorly overall, although I think there are some things we can talk about there. But the ability to run outside the tackles was so important, and Bo Prabula was a huge part of that. You saw some of these concepts. You've been seeing them all year, but with that more tangible threat in the run game, Bo Prabula provided that for them. What did you think of? I don't want to make it just about the run game, though, because he was a good throw. He threw some dimes in the second half, Fitz.
Yes, the Bo Prabula can't throw thing that we've been talking about for a long time. You know what? I'll give it to you. He doesn't throw the ball like Drew. Very few humans on this earth actually do. But Bo has done a good job of getting better as a passer. When you get more confident, you can throw some of those balls. Now, do I like him throwing it that window across the field? Was it Trey Wallace that he pulled the RPO? That's a tough throw, man.
Over the middle? Yeah. Whoo. With a linebacker coming this way and a safety coming this way. That was a dot that he had to throw perfectly for sure.
Exactly. But he made some really good throws, some really good decisions, which has been his sort of holdup when he's been in the game. Like his zone read has not exactly been what you would think for a guy that's that good at running the ball. And he really did some good things, made some terrific decisions down the stretch. Some of that just comes with seeing more of the defense. Some of that comes with just a little bit, just stepping a little bit further into the water. And, you have to give him kudos. His last 10 passes of the game, he hit his last 10 passes of the game. That is Not something I thought I'd be saying about a Bo Prabula game, as people were summoning the ghost of Taquan Roberson there for a while. So really good job
Just
flipping
a
that on its.
totally different situation in so many different ways, but I understand the impulse to go to the worst possible scenario. Bo Prabula is a third-year quarterback who's been playing and trying to. They've treated him like a starter this entire time from a I guess an overall institutional perspective. Even if he doesn't get all the first team reps, this is a guy who's come in prepared fits, and you saw 81% completion percentage for the quarterbacks overall. I think it's interesting the narrative about Aller and the offense, and it wasn't jiving in the first half. There's some truth to that, but he threw for 148 yards and a touchdown and a 78% completion percentage in the first half. So the offense overall, despite some of those issues of putting it all together throughout the full game, I thought generally operated well in the first half. Just to kind of roll things back and give a kind of a comprehensive perspective, what did you think of Aller and his performance before the injury?
You look at the last 2 weeks, and it's come down to maybe 1, 2 plays that just derails some things. Today, it was the Julian Fleming drop when he was, I mean, I'm not gonna say he was gonna walk in, but he was gonna get
Pretty close.
close to his ultimate goal of getting to the end zone. Last week, of course, against USC, of course, the offensive pass interference, just those little things that knock it off the tracks, and then all of a sudden you're settling for something other than the ideal 7 points. And you kind of felt that Drew was in control early, did a really nice job, and then kind of got behind the dam there, and that was the whole team. I don't think it was just on Drew, but that was the whole team. Guys were not as open as we would usually see them. That zone was effective, like that keep everything in front of you cover two that Wisconsin does so well was effective. Yep. It did open a few lanes in the running game. We saw a few more bigger chunks tonight, but it was one of those things where everything just kind of got really tight, and you saw that from the top down, I'd say.
Yeah, there's a couple things I think from the passing attack too, of the run game influences the passing game to a certain degree. When you have a quarterback that you're not expecting to run, there are certain things you are willing to do in coverage. There was one play I threw up on the message board that I said the next iteration of this, when it was 4 wide receivers one way and Trey Wallace the other, is there's just a Mike linebacker and a quarterback in the middle of the field. So you're willing to abandon the middle of the field because you don't think the quarterback is going to run the football. That takes away some of those options, and that's just one example of how the dynamics behind center can change some of those things. That's not exactly what happened in the second half, but there are ways that you can do those things to help manipulate those coverages. And just running the football well and being consistent at that, you eventually have to drop a safety in the box. You can't play with 2 deep safeties at that point.
There's a question here from Bruno. It just came up. It said, what changes were made in the offense when Bo got in? Here's a little secret. That is the offense.
Yes.
That Bo is a better fit for what Andy Kotelnicki has traditionally done and wants to do than Drew. They've adjusted the offense for Drew because he's got that unworldly arm there. But you saw a lot of what he likes to do, and it opened just everything up. Like the mobility there, the selection of just where you're able to get the ball is. Yeah. I don't want to say night and day because Drew's done a terrific job running the offense, but you're seeing more of the pure Kotelnicki when Bo's out there just because of the fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. This is the Labatt Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We're brought to you by Labatt Beer. We're going to have our first official tailgate show coming up next week. Tailgate with Labatt coming up next week before Penn State, Ohio State. But when it's time to kick back and watch the game, Penn State has not had any kickback games. That's the thing. You do still want to grab a Pilsner tight in one hand and your phone tight in the other so you can type angrily on the Blue and White Illustrated message board. It's a pristine time in Happy Valley. And the Pilsner is as pristine as Happy Valley itself. Labatt and Labatt Blue Light deliver an unmatched taste that goes down smooth every time. Whether you're tailgating at a game with 107,000 of your closest friends or just watching on the couch, Labatt and Labatt Blue Light are your go-to for unbeatable drinkability. Bleed blue and white. Drink blue and light. Please drink responsibly. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. You can find Labatt products at Glenn Miller's Beer and Soda, 1029 Market Street in Lemoyne. This is the Labatt Postgame Show. We've got your questions here in the chat if you want to talk to us and get some of your thoughts on the air. We've given our opening salvo about the offense. We're going to get to the defense here in just 1 second. Got to get through a couple of these because we've got some awesome listeners and we've got a ton of new people here. There's nearly 1,000 people watching the show. I have a guess that you're not all subscribers to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. If you aren't, we do this 3 days a week live, Tuesday through Thursday, 10 a.m. on YouTube. We do a tailgate show, and then we do this post-game show. You can show up for all of those, or you can just subscribe and watch them whenever you want. Also, live right now over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, it is the Ohio State game. I've said it 3 times, and I said I wasn't going to talk about it. Of course, we're going to talk about it. That's coming up next week. It is the deciding game of the Penn State football season. And their college football playoff aspirations. You can join Blue White Illustrated for 50% off with promo code JOIN50. I'm going to put this up here one more time, Fitz. JOIN50, 50% off of annual memberships right now. And I don't know when they turn these things on and off. I just said, hey, if you're going to turn it on after the game, I need to know because I want to make a fancy graphic. So I know it's officially on. So join us, and you can get all of the analysis that we do in the game, post-game, all that stuff. Fitz, what do you write after the game for fans to consume that they can go check out once we're done here?
My first impressions have been something that sort of ignites conversation, whether it's actually what I wrote about or not. But it's been something that's been very popular. I started doing it when I came over to On3. Our boss says, "Hey, we want more of your opinion in this." So it's more of a column than I'm used to. I know Nate's the column guy, but it's gone over pretty well. So impressions have stacked up. Of course, Greg and Nate are out in Madison. They're going to write about this win until they can't see anymore, and then they're flying back early tomorrow morning, and we're going to make them write some more. So definitely check that out. I will say, Ryan Snyder, it's a big week for him. He's got a list that went up on Friday for the Ohio State game. I know he's tracking whiteout visitors as well. He was down at McDonough, saw Brandon Finney in person, talked to the people down there. So big week for coverage at Blue White Illustrated. So check us out and join the club, man. It's been arrow straight up since the beginning of the season, and we're really pleased with the product that we put out, and we think you will be too.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, a lot of growth and excitement on all those fronts. Speaking of a wild ride, let's get to our defensive player of the game. There's really only one option, and it's the guy that's been the defensive player of the game for most of the games this year so far. The defensive player of the game brought to you by State College criminal defense attorney Matt McClanahan of McClanahan Law Firm. Matt McClanahan is a Penn State alum and a super fan who texts me before every game with his predictions, so we can talk about him here in the segment. He said 38-13, so they were only 10 points off from his prediction. Now, he thought the defensive touchdown would be an icing on the cake situation, not a desperately needed thing to get the win for the Nittany Lions, and obviously that's our defensive player of the game, for me at least anyway, is Jaylen Reed. There are a lot of players that stood out in a really impressive second half, but that interception fits. I mean, you talk, I don't believe in momentum necessarily as this, like, the wind blows back and forth, but that was a momentum changer. That changed the tone of the game, and it stopped the hope, I think, for Wisconsin in the second half. Do you have somebody else, or do you want to add on to that?
I mean, he's the obvious choice, right? It was one of those plays where it was really interesting to watch the substitutions and everything, because Wisconsin got to the line and there's 8 seconds left. So you don't have a pre-snap read of what you've got an idea of what you think the defense is doing, but you don't have that disguising coverage. And now I have to go to this. Now I have to check to this. And you snap the ball with 2 seconds left without knowing the full coverage, which meant Jaylen Reed could have done whatever he wanted to. And he found himself in the middle of the field. He found that ball in the middle of his chest plate, and he did a really good job returning that. They could have gone without the unsportsmanlike afterward, because that obviously.
What happened there? What I didn't see. I saw the only thing on the replay I saw is I think he gave the ball to his mom.
I don't think you're allowed to do that, and I'm going to guess that's what it's for. But I other than we both watched the TV copy. Like, those guys are in Madison, so we'll see if there's anything more that comes of that. So in a field position game, probably not the best decision, but feels pretty good to have a pick six, because Penn State has been barking up that tree a little bit this year. Of course, got the one called back against Illinois, but for Reed to get it, for a player that is the heart and soul of that defense in Jaylen Reed to get it, just you can't say enough about that. And he almost got a second one too, which was much
Yeah.
closer than the time they spent on evaluating that. That was really close there
Yeah.
at the end of the game. So kudos to that defense. It was the first performance by this defense that felt overwhelming. They've actually been really good, but
Yeah.
it didn't feel like it was an offensive defensive performance, which is they're getting tackles for loss, they're getting turnovers. Wisconsin, a team that has turned the ball over, they did not fumble tonight, which I believe is the first game they haven't done that. You've got a lot of guys. When you look to that defense, a lot of guys stood out. I saw some people chatting up Lonzo Ford in the chat. He was very good. He made a couple of plays that you should not, at 320 pounds, be able to get to the outside and make. He did a great job. Devon J. Thomas made a similar play in the fourth quarter, but Penn State, sort of buckled down. Zakee Wheatley made the play that ended the game. He was very good as well. So you just keep looking all over that defense and say, hey, this guy made a play. This guy made a play. Kobe King stepped up in the second half.
Amin Vanover, I thought, was good, especially in absence of Denai Dennis Sutton. There was one drive where one of those 3 and outs in the second half where he got a stop by plugging up a counter where he stonewalled the first puller, made them bounce, and then the tackle for a loss. And then he got a spin move on the right tackle that sped up Braeden Locke. The one where he got really frustrated and was like getting in the face of his receiver after the play. That's because he had a defensive end in his face. So I agree. Lots of players stepped up in that second half.
Very interesting to see the trajectory that he used tonight to throw the ball, Locke, because it came out 100 miles an hour, like at first, and then he started getting not so much the pressure that you look at that he was getting hit, but he had some guys in his face. He had to go around, he had to go over. He did a couple of nice jobs laying it, sort of layering it over the top of the first level of that defense, but really didn't look comfortable all night. Did not get helped early by his receivers, and there's something to be said on the defense for that as well. You just go down the list. We mentioned Kobe King a little bit. I think he got gypped out of a tackle for loss there early in the third quarter, I believe it was. Everybody's going to look at that one play where he got kind of trucked, but the Wisconsin running back got under his pads and just pushed him back. That's what happens. Like that.
Yeah. Well, that dude is crazy. There were two plays. There were two plays in the first half where he was like 6 inches from the ground and somehow kept his feet and kept rolling, because there were 2 tackles for a loss. Zakee Wheatley had one of them. I think Tony Rojas had the other, where they had him properly wrapped and tackled, and somehow he got leverage underneath somebody who was on the ground and was able to run forward and at least eke out a yard and a half. That dude was insane. That was a great running back.
They squat at Wisconsin. They squat a lot. So you could definitely see that. But on the outside, really didn't think there was too much, aside from the big play down the field, too much trouble for the outside corners. And that's kind of been the theme for these guys. Yeah. You don't really notice them all that much. I know AJ Harris got beat down the field one time, but it was pretty good. Aside from Jalen Kimber coming after the punter and just Ole type stuff. That was not really expected, because it wasn't a fake. It wasn't a called fake. It was just improvisation by the punter. Did a really good job. And then he kind of paid for it at the end from Don DeLuca.
I really respect and appreciate not just Todd Blackledge, but that crew on NBC. I think they do a great job with their replays, and they're really quick on diagnosing what happened on a play, which is not easy. And because you're right, I thought that was a fake because I'm doing two or three things. I'm trying to write down some data on the last play. I usually take punts off because I'm trying to go back and see what happened on a play. And suddenly they still have the football. I'm like, what is going on here? They do a great job there. You mentioned a couple things.
Speaking of that fake, Penn State brought the corner as a block, as a punt block. I guess we're going to do the hand quotes there, which usually you have a guy from that line looping back around to sort of fill his spot, not take his guy, but fill his spot. Penn State didn't have that. They got a couple of guys sucked into the middle, and then that left the entire left side of the field open. And that was, again, credit the punter. That's a heck of a game. He maybe their MVP tonight. He was really good.
Yeah, there are so many great things in the chat I want to get to, but you just said something that I think is one of those James Franklin conversation points. They were dominating field position in the first half of that game, where Penn State had a 90 and a 92-yard drive at one point. They score on the 90-yard drive, then they go 92 yards, and eventually they have to punt on that one. But early in that game, part of the conversation about the first half is they were constantly in the shadow of their own goal line. A. Campbell, he got this in at the beginning of the show. He says, not sure what I just watched, but a gutsy win again. Find a way to make the college football playoff and get healthy after the regular season. Nice look at 65% and need Donko. Oh, Nick looks 65% and need Donko. Happy for Bo. Yeah, I think that sums up a lot of what we saw today. I said coming into this game from Monday on, how healthy is Nick Singleton? How healthy is Anthony Donko? If those two guys are back to 100, like as close as you can be to healthy, then they roll in this game. Neither of those guys were healthy, and they did not roll in the first half. And I think that I don't want to say anytime a player gets injured is a benefit, but at least they were able to pivot to what Bo Prabula was good at doing, and they could augment the offense to do some of the things in the playbook that they haven't been able to get to. So it was kind of I think they did a lot of things to help out Nolan Rucci and Nick Singleton, who were, not 100% in filling in for players. Corey says, we have to accept that Tom Allen plays relatively vanilla in the first half because he has the athletes, makes adjustments at half, then shuts down in the second half. Seems like that might backfire against a good team. I do want to have this conversation, Fitz, because I don't think they play vanilla in the first half. I just think they play better in the second. Like the D line, appreciably, I don't think anything was necessarily different, but they had 3 third down and longs on that very first drive. The punt situation was one of them, and then they give up a long pass on the other third. It just felt like they were playing well enough to dominate that game early, but things just kept happening in the first half. Yeah, what did you take from that?
I mean, you had the punt that was not a fake, but turned into a fake that, it's just one of those things that just, gut punched you down the field. And then all of a sudden you get points out of that drive where you're expecting, I don't recall if that was a 3 and out or if it was just a short drive to begin with, but it was definitely one of those ones where they should have been off the field. Wisconsin's done a decent job in terms of third downs this year. They were, I think, 46.5%, 47%. And tonight, honestly, 7 of 18 usually take that. That's usually okay in a matchup against the number 3 team in the country. Penn State, by the way, 8 of 14 themselves, and I believe 6 of 8 in the second half, which was really, really a big deal. So
yeah,
I think that makes sense. But yeah, this defense, I don't think it's done anything schematically different in the second half than it has in the first. Like it's maybe a tad bit more aggressive calling blitzes and things like that. But I think you're probably looking into it too much to say that they just sit back and let the other team come to them, sort of like the Novocaine, just wait for it to kick in and then it goes. I don't think that's the case, and I don't think the adjustments are all that much. It just clicks and it happens. I don't know how to explain it, but I don't think they do all that much schematically different, other than understanding the situation of the game and understanding what the other team is trying to do a little bit better. As we mentioned, they haven't been great against the script drive. They were okay, and then they put them back on the hook, and then that was a problem. So tough to argue otherwise. Tough to argue the result, really, because the third quarter defense has been freaking phenomenal. Just been absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. But I don't think it's all that much different than what they try to do throughout the whole game.
Part of it, I think, is teams come out and they say, okay, new ball game. This is a close game. We're going to get back to doing what we want to do, which is to run the ball, stay away from the pass rush, and we're going to establish the line of scrimmage, because Penn State dominated the line of scrimmage in the first half, and they were constantly in third and long, and they constantly had to throw the football and put Braeden Locke in those situations. And they came out and ran the ball a bunch on first down and put themselves in third and long. The difference is in the first half, they gave up those third and longs, and they were giving up some of the short passes. And I don't know why they can't play zone in the first half of games. That is something that is pretty consistent, that they struggle when they go to zone, but you can't play press man on every single play. So they need to be able to do that. That's something that I think, I don't know how at this point in the season, like you work on that, but they need to find a way to make those things a little bit better. I also appreciated, I don't think they went to this later in the game. They did the 7-up where they would drop in. They'd have everybody mugging the line of scrimmage like a Manny Diaz defense, and they drop into zones. And a lot of times they would actually only rush 3. And then they would have both Carter and Rojas be spies on the quarterback, or somebody was on a delayed blitz. And it didn't work. Like you give a quarterback long enough, he's going to throw the football to an open receiver against even 8 players. Crypto Ducat says here, can we please stop pretending Singleton is still not hurt? Yeah, I think most of us agree with that. The power through contact is the problem, it seems to me. When he gets out in space, he can still run. He's still athletic and fast, but between the tackles has been a bit of a struggle for him. He says that's not the kind of game I expect James Franklin to win, and he did. Happy to be proven very wrong. Appreciate Crypto Ducat here on the show. We just got a ton. I'm going to try and read through some of these. This is a game that we should have dropped in the last couple of years. Very nice to see. Injuries are what we have going this year. Yeah, overcoming that through the second half of the season is going to be very interesting. Brett says this game could have easily been like 2021 Iowa. Props to Bo and props to the defense for another stellar second half. OSU has two offenses to study for now. That's an interesting way to put that. I think that's right. I think that's right. I do want to say Fitz. Just a quick pause. I'm going to get back to some of these things here in a second, but sorry, something that I read just totally threw me off, and I forgot what I was going to ask you when it comes to the game.
Terrific.
Give me a thought from the defense while I rally here and get up the next super chat, because there's something that was really offensive I read, and it just totally threw me off.
Oh, fantastic. Just going to put on my Nate Bauer hat here and say, you guys expect James Franklin to lose this game, or would have lost this game in the last couple of years, but he hasn't. That hasn't been an issue. You look at Indiana, was at Indiana last year. That was a home game, but it was, it was one of those struggles, and they came through. You look at Purdue, the season opener in 2022, that was a struggle. They were able to do that. That was actually probably more structurally accurate. They did lose to Michigan State in 2021. And they beat Illinois last year. This is that's up here, guys. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily how that played out factually. But Penn State was able to pivot in this game, and that's really what's important, is to again supplement the guys that you need to get a little bit more, in tune with everything, get into the groove of the game. Prabula, obviously, when he came in, sorry for the obviously, but when he came in, it was one of those things where he's looking around, he's got some wide eyes, he's played before, but it's still a different situation when everything is on your shoulders. Had that fumble that he pulled late from Katron that was on him, that actually was there. It was the right call. It was the right read. He just dropped the football. Didn't look tremendously confident throwing the ball. And then you get a couple of completions. All of a sudden, it kind of adds up. So they did a really nice job. And I think you called upon the defense there to make plays, as opposed to, I don't want to say lengthen the game, but they came out and they made some plays. Obviously the pick six, but a lot of tackles for loss, a lot of tackles for no gain, a lot of positive things from a getting Wisconsin off schedule standpoint. And really, that was the name of the game, was get Wisconsin behind the sticks, and all of a sudden they got to throw the ball. Guess what?
Yeah.
They're not going to do that consistently. So Penn State was able to turn the tables on that and did a really nice job with that. So I think it is one of those things where you compliment the players that came in, Bo and got the guys on the defense that came in. But at the same time, you look at the guys that helped get them there. Liam Clifford and Trey Wallace, especially. I thought the receivers, outside of the lull in getting open in the first half and the Fleming drop, the receivers stepped up in a big way. And that was, I don't want to say unexpected, but that was something that Penn State needed. And they certainly did that, made some really tough catches, hung onto the football. Penn State also protected the football really well. It was not a situation where they put it in doubt, other than Bo dropping that ball and getting back on top of it. It was a really good road. I don't want to say game plan, because that's not the word for it, but a good road audition in terms of doing what you needed to do to get this one across the line.
Yeah. So I remember what I was going to say now. The Bo Prabula package early in the year, somebody was mentioning that got him ready to play. I actually think they were phasing out the Bo Prabula package at this point, and in favor of Tyler Warren, because it makes more sense that a specialty player is going to come in and run specialty plays. A full-time quarterback in that situation, putting him in the game to then have him run one or two trick plays instead of being able to take a series and chain some of these things together. There's just so much pressure in making one play if you're the quarterback. And I think that conversely, putting Tyler Warren in those situations has been much more beneficial near the goal line. 260-pound guy running downhill is much better than Drew Aller or 200. I think we saw at one point Prabula did try to lower the shoulder and he got blasted in this game. Like he's not Will Levis, right? So he's not going to be a guy that's going to truck people. He's not going to lower the shoulder on everybody, but he does pick up all the yards that are there. He's aggressive with the football as a runner, and those are all positive things. I'm very curious to see what was going on in that first half with the coverages, because that was a frustration that Penn State had to check the ball down quite a lot. Aller had to run. He had to throw the ball away at times. Then, of course, he got sacked in one of those situations. That's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. So join me, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. There's a lot of new people since the last time we did this here on the show. If you didn't see this before, 50% off. You can join me in the Blue White Illustrated message board. I break down nearly every single play from every single Penn State football game, offense and defense, to give you what happened and the why and some of the process in the football. I do the X's and O's stuff. I try to do it live here during the game, and I try to get as much as I can so that tomorrow morning we fill in kind of color in the details. Fitz, one of the things I noticed they did in the second half that I thought was very smart, they rolled the pocket a lot. And when Bo had to throw, especially on third down, they were rolling. They gave Nolan Rucci help on a lot of these situations where they kept Tyler Warren in the block, and they rolled Bo Prabula away and designed some of that to get Trey Wallace the football. A lot of times, I said in the tailgate show, a lot of times Tyler Warren, a lot of the things he's getting, those are first reads. You normally have your number one wide receiver be the guy who is your first read. But in the second half, it kind of felt like the offense operated a little bit better on a lot of levels, but the quarterback throwing to the number one receiver felt like one of those things that just felt right. Did you notice or feel any of that? And I guess what was your thought of using Trey Wallace a little more? You said it was a little unexpected. What did you think of like how they were able to get it all put together? Or did I mischaracterize that?
I don't know that it was unexpected in the sense that this is a defense that he's able to attack because he, everyone's going to look at the jumping ability and the one on like the big play ability in the red zone or whatever. That's not necessarily what he is. He's been phenomenal over the middle of the field this year. Like absolutely, I don't want to say flawless, but phenomenal. Because when you think back to the last 2 years, there's been slants that he's dropped. There's been things over the middle of the field where that's kind of been the question there. He's been terrific, and you saw that as Penn State stacked the oop-de-oop on the left side with they went quads, and then went right back to him for the slant. That's not the first time they've done that, but
I love that.
That's a lot of confidence. They ran a fourth down play. I want to say maybe to Warren in that situation earlier this year, or it could be conflating that with another last year. But they have a lot of confidence in Trey Wallace. 7 targets, 5 catches, nothing that was dropped or anything like that. It was just kind of, I think those other 2 targets kind of sailed on him. He had the one on the third down comeback that, I think people were calling for pass interference. I don't think that was pass interference, but you had definite confidence in him. And I think that that's what's great. Unfortunately for him, he set the bar so high against West Virginia by just dicing up West Virginia that you see 5 catches for 67 yards and you're like, oh, that's all right. Yeah, that's fine. But it was a very productive day for him. And again, Clifford stepping up. I know Bo and Liam are very close. So I'm not surprised they have some sort of connection there. 3 catches, 40 yards, a big 23-yarder there on a really good throw, a really good anticipation throw from Bo, which your backup quarterback coming in the game, you don't know if those are going to be there, and you don't know if you're going to have the confidence to do it, but this is a kid that's got a ton of confidence. So I was pleased with that. Was pleased with Khalil Dinkins. He got his touchdown. PSU Mike, wherever you're at, he got his touchdown finally. You nailed it. For the 6th week in a row, I think you predicted it, but you nailed it.
Long crosser. That's his play in the end zone, in the red zone.
Iowa touchdown play last year. Yeah, I was actually looking at that this week because we were looking at stats from Drew from last year when he threw 4 touchdowns and only I think he threw 38 times for 166 and 4 touchdowns. With the longest one was 9 yards. That was the 9-yard touchdown to Khalil Dinkins. He was wide open, so he did that. He also had a very good catch earlier in the game that moved the sticks. So production from all over. You didn't have to lean on Tyler Warren as much, and they did a really good job spreading it out. Again, Liam, and then 4 catches for Katron Allen. Did not expect that. I'll be honest with you. Did not expect all that. Singleton involved in the game as well in the passing game. So just kind of spreading it out, making it work, and just continually moving those sticks. It was a big difference in yardage once again, 419 to 298, and it was pretty well balanced, 246 passing, 173 rushing. You'll take that on the road in the Big Ten. And you also take I'm not good at math here, but 15-point win when you're 6.5-point favorites.
Yeah. David Greeter says, masterclass from Andy Kotelnicki. Penn State has talent all over the field. What causes so much inconsistency? Also, the defense is not elite, but very good. Are we going to be healthy enough to finish the season? A lot of thoughts in there. But, David, I think we've addressed this. I just want to say this one more time. I don't want to, I want this to be very clear. This is not me saying that Bo Prabula should be the starter or any of those things, but there is this conversation we've had here through the first half of the show that he fits what they want to do from a run game perspective, and that is the basis of the offense, is the run game. And James Franklin even said, I think during the bye week, talking about what are some of the differences, and he said a true option, not just having some read option plays, but there are plays they haven't even gotten to yet that are within the plays they're already running of Bo has the option to throw after he keeps in a lot of these situations. And they just haven't gotten to any of those plays yet because he's decided to keep the football there. So there are these layers to the offense. Let me give you another example, David, of what Fitz said of kind of fitting the offense to Drew Aller. That pitch play to Tyler Warren in Andy Kotelnicki's offense in 2023 at Kansas, that's just a quarterback power. They pull the tight end and the backside guard, and there's an option. There's a speed option to the outside where the running back can keep it, or the quarterback runs up the middle with a convoy. But because Drew Aller is not that guy, they change one of those guys from a puller into a receiving option. I think that's a brilliant tweak of the play you already had in your playbook. But these are just these little things that Drew Aller is a first-round talent, and I just want to go back to the way he was playing in the first half, the first quarter of this game, where he's got pressure from his right tackle position, and some of the reasons why this offense isn't necessarily clicking as you're talking about. When you have a pocket passer, Fitz, you need both your tackles to play well. You need a strong pocket for him to sit in, and so that requires just more pieces playing well and harder pieces to find. Anthony Donko's hurt. Nolan Rucci's still working on some of his technique stuff. So when you have those situations and those pieces that are kind of like working their way through, this offense, the way they did it this year, is what I expected coming into the season, because that's how you protect your tackles. So there's a bunch of different layers to that, David.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, when you look at the film, how much Wisconsin threw at Nolan Rucci because they knew him so well. Like I think they did. I think there was some rhyme to that reason there, because when Donka goes out, things change. And you pulled up the numbers this week in terms of. I know we say that Rucci's better as a run blocker than a pass blocker, but like the numbers are kind of like he is what he is there. So
yeah.
And hey, he had some really good reps in pass protection too. But from a consistent down to down basis, you want Donka as healthy as possible. And it didn't seem like the same type of injury from a couple of weeks ago. So you just got, I mean, it's one of those things. You just got to get those guys as ready as they can be at this point, because that is October in the Big Ten. You get beat up, you get things that happen. I think Ohio State's down to their third left tackle as well. Like it's going to be one of those things that happen, and how these teams respond to it and how they persevere are the ones that are going to end up either in Indy or in that home playoff game in the college football playoff.
Waiting around hoping they're one of those teams instead of being the one deciding whether or not they're one of those playoff teams in the championship game or beyond. Scott, we did cover this in terms of we needed to learn more about the situation. Jaylen Reed is not one of those guys that is, doing things from a selfish perspective. So I'm wondering what the situation was. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong quite often. But when he's talking here about Jaylen Reed drawing the personal foul after the pick six, it did result in a kick return, and then it did result in points on the next drive. So it is consequential. That's just, I don't want to be too harsh on a guy who is the team leader, the heart of the defense, a smart guy, and somebody who I know to have spoken with and is, presents himself as a super humble, really team-oriented guy. So right. In these situations, Scott, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, even though I know what you're saying is absolutely correct. And I would feel that way about other players, maybe that I don't know the reputation of the way I do Jay Reed.
Here's the other thing. The 6 points was pretty big. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I'll give some leeway. And the other thing is, That's a pick six. So that's Wisconsin's football. That's not his football to give away. Like that's I don't think she got to keep that football because they're going to need that one back.
That's a good point. I
Uh,
didn't think about
but
that.
yeah, I mean it's just one of those things. But
He's already
yeah,
practicing for the NFL. He's just ready for it at this point.
don't say that. People are saying that about KJ. But no, I
Oh,
think
no.
you look at what that play meant. I mean, play of the game by far, not even close. Like just to turn that one back on the hinge that game seemed to be, I don't want to say getting away, but it presented all of the opportunities that you needed to turn that game in the sense that there was field position change. Wisconsin dominated field position. Wisconsin special teams won this game versus Penn State special teams like that. I
Mhm.
think that's a facet that was pretty much in their favor from start to finish. But you were able to pin them back realistically, get them behind the sticks with the tackle for loss that wasn't a tackle for loss for Kobe King. Somehow he tackled him a yard and a half behind the line of scrimmage. I don't know, but it's one of those things where you start rolling in the other direction when everything is rolling against you for I don't want to say quarter and a half, but it was pretty darn close. So
Yeah.
it's just a culmination of everything coming together and turning that tide back the other way. And then you felt pretty good about where you stood based on Wisconsin's ability to move the football. There were questions after the I believe it was the Dinkins tight end or the Dinkins is a tight end, the Dinkins touchdown about Penn State kicking the extra point versus going for two. But you look at the team on the other side, and you're going to say that they're
Right.
going to have to execute one play if they get that touchdown to potentially tie it at 8 versus that other alternative there. They're going to have to make the execution, and you didn't feel that they were ultimately a threat in that situation. I know Penn
Yep.
State, of course, gave up the points with the 12 men on the field. You can't do that. That's a big
Yeah.
mistake.
That
Penn
happened to
State,
both teams. I thought that was an interesting thing. Was that tempo related, do you think,
I
tonight?
think it was probably tempo related and personnel related in the sense that there were times when Penn State would, or excuse me, whichever offense was on the field would go to hurry up and then not sub, and then but you've got versatile players, you got versatile personnel groups, especially on the Penn State side, where you
Mhm.
have to account for that, and then you want to make a sub, but it's not one of those things where you have to wait until the guy's off if Penn State doesn't make a sub. So if you caught that, me running circles in my head right there, it was a really good job by Penn State capitalizing on that. They did it earlier in the game, of course, but when Wisconsin didn't get off the field. Those things are big, and it hurt Penn State on the other side as well. So I think that's really what it goes into. I just generally assume that that was Bo Perbula's head getting twisted all the way around with his face mask. That's what that flag
Yeah.
was for, and then all of a sudden he goes to the chest and says illegal substitution. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. So that was
Never mind that it's almost Halloween and the quarterback got exercised. Yeah, 12 men on the field.
yeah. So I think Penn State responded, of course, and were able to score in the red zone, which is one of those things when you go on the road and Penn State 2-2 in the red zone today, 2 touchdowns. That you need, like, it's not a want. You don't want to execute. You need to finish those drives in the red zone. And Penn State
Yeah.
did a really good job of that, even though they didn't have all their chips to play with.
I want to come back to this one. Dan Lane says, seems like Katron looked a step more explosive tonight. I don't want to come down on Katron and make this sound wrong, but when you have a perfectly blocked run play and that last play was perfectly blocked for that touchdown, you had 3 blocks that just opened up the Red Sea. Everyone looks explosive when you can just run in a straight line for a touchdown. But he was the more effective running back in this game tonight, and I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I'll push back on you a little bit there. I thought he did look semi-explosive. He got the ball as a receiver as well, got it in space and got going. He doesn't bring the hammer as much as you kind of think that he does. He's smaller than Nick Singleton, like he's lighter than Nick Singleton, so you would think that just based on his thunder and lightning sort of capabilities that he would be able to run some guys over. I don't think he has that right now, but he did showcase some things in the open field. Of course, fell at USC in a play that could have been like similar to that. But he did a really nice job of keeping his feet under him this week, and they needed it for sure. And they needed him to hold on to the football. And then he ends up 7.8 yards per carry. Got the big play to end the game. But obviously that touchdown is what everybody's looking at. Tyler Warren on that play just kind of opened up the lane for him. I know that you said there were 3 blocks on it, but Tyler Warren been sort of, not critical of his blocking skills. I don't want to call him an elite blocker because I don't think he's an elite blocker.
Yeah,
But
it's been
he has improved.
just a little bit overhyped because everyone calls him this like complete tight end. You think a dominant run blocker. He's been good.
He's been
He's
good.
been good, maybe not dominant, right?
Yes. But he was dominant on that play. Like he did everything he needed to do to give Katron enough of a lane. And then Katron got to the corner, man. You got to give him credit. He did a really good job getting to where he needed to get, which his speed has always been the question. And he got exactly where he needed to be. I will say, I do think the speed showed up in a big way tonight in terms of, and I know it was a frustrating game for a lot of Penn State fans for 2.5 quarters or whatever it was. But I think Penn State's defensive speed really showed up, especially when Wisconsin had to go to the air late and had to basically play sideline to sideline because they were not going to get down the field. So I think that is notable as well. And I know that there are many people talking Tony Rojas in the chat, and you texted me during the game. I'm going to throw it right back to you.
Well, I was actually hoping you could save me because I try to be as objective as possible. I don't know if I'm being objective about Tony Rojas because I think he's great. I think he's playing much better than people are giving him credit for. I'm also watching him take on and destroy blocks that are allowing other people to make plays. I'm watching him chase something down, and even if he doesn't make the play, he's forcing it to bubble, and then Dejon Lane comes in, and there's a cascade of players because he took away the point of attack. You look for Kobe King plays from your linebackers, and he's just a different type of player. But I also think he's playing more physical than people are giving him credit for. He was in the wrong gap. My biggest problem with that touchdown he gave up is he's in the wrong freaking gap. Not that he wasn't taking on the block correctly or all those things. He was supposed to flow over top, and then you're supposed to have the next linebacker take the gap that he was in. He tried to shoot it and make a play in the backfield. That's not his play to make. That's a discipline thing. And Paul does say he's frequently out of position. I don't think it was all that frequent today. I think the issues were less frequent. And what he provides you as a coverage player is difference making. Again, I wrote about it this week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. He's one of the best coverage linebackers in America right now. And he didn't do anything to dissuade me of that opinion after his performance tonight. If Braeden Locke doesn't throw the ball out of bounds, Tony Rojas had a pick six earlier in the game because he had dropped underneath some coverage into the flat. They were expecting that quick throw to the outside, and he almost got a pick six, but the ball did not come anywhere near him because he prevented that play from happening. So it's a complete thing. You got to look at all the plays he's making and all the plays he's preventing. But I know I'm going to be on this island, Fitz, because fans just want to see tackles for a loss from their linebackers, and that's what they're expecting on every run play.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought Rojas was better tonight. Like, I had been critical of his play, and I do think that the shoulders got something to do with it in terms of, being physical and being able to tackle. But you look at the one screen play that he and Abdul Carter were dropping a little bit in the coverage, and they played it perfectly. The issue that we have here is sort of a larger issue in that the first thing that they do sticks in your mind for the rest of the game, whatever. So Wisconsin 3rd and 10 on their own 36 on the first drive. Rojas drops to the wrong zone, and he gets a slant run on the inside of him. Like it was a situation where if he's in the right spot, that problem. First off, the ball doesn't get thrown. Secondly, the guy doesn't get behind him for the we get 14 yards there to extend the drive there.
So he overran his zone for sure.
Yeah, he overran his zone, and that's kind of what sticks in people's minds. And then you're like, oh, here we go again. Tony's out of position all the time. That's what happens. And I don't think that happened tonight. So I'm curious to look when we go back and take a look, second look, third look, whatever, where he kind of fits from top to bottom on that defense. Because he's I don't want to call him he's been a liability at times in terms of his tackling, in terms of finishing. I don't think he was anywhere close to that tonight.
No, and the aggressiveness that the defense played with up front extended to the second level with the linebackers. And again, some of those plays, the car crash that happens in the middle, there's a lot of that where you don't get to see some of the players making those plays. And I thought in those situations, he was good too. But those highlight plays, he's not making those plays that you're expecting. Like when Abdul Carter was a freshman, it was kind of like see ball, get ball. His second year, it was more, hey, we need you to make some thinking plays. And he struggled with that. Tony Rojas is making more thinking plays, but is struggling to see ball, get ball, and bring down the ball carry in some of those situations. So I think that there's just this development process. I wanted him to be better than he was. I didn't want to give him the development time, Fitz. You and I talked about this before the season. And I'm like, I think he can be an All-American. I think this can be one of the best linebackers in college football because of his coverage ability. It's just different. We haven't seen guys with those instincts at that position at Penn State in a long time. And the development process has to happen. You're watching a sophomore play football. There are going to be some learning curves, even if I want to get to the good stuff personally.
Yeah, and a bit harsh to call that a dropped interception there at the end. His job is to get up and get in a lane, and he's got his arms straight up. He does not know that ball is coming at his chest. Like,
Yeah.
it is one of those things. I gotta respond to that.
Yeah.
So no, it's a bit harsh to call it a dropped interception, even though, when you slow it down on TV, it certainly looks like that. But his job was to get in the passing lane. He did a sufficient job of that and did a really good job. So it's like I've said it before. The standard for this defense is so high based on the last couple of years, and that's kind of the talking point here with this defense. Is this group is really good. It's not as fun as and exciting as the Manny Diaz group because you don't see the blitzes, you don't go after the ball, but some of the stuff that you do see especially when you watch it the second time through, I see people are saying Abdul needs to be more of a game wrecker. Abdul had 2 and 3 guys on him all the time, all the time, which helps everyone else. And then, you got to eventually finish the plays, and you're going to go back to this tape and see that Wisconsin got the ball out in 2.3 seconds once again. And that's going to be one of those things that you have to go about. But again, when you start to slow it down, when you get some points, you get ahead, all of a sudden it changes the way that you're able to attack that quarterback. And that mattered over the last quarter and a half.
Yeah. I can say this definitively here, sitting here after 2 games. Miller Moss and Braeden Locke both got rid of the football too quick in the game because they were afraid of the Penn State pass rush. Again, the personality of the defense materially affecting the game plan, and the opponent. And I think that those are some huge things that if the sacks aren't there, they're still part of the situation. But everyone got what they wanted in this game, Fitz, because genuinely, the first rep of Abdul Carter playing Mike linebacker happened tonight. They had, I think it was an odd front because I think they had Alonzo Ford over the nose. There might have been some alignment where they didn't really have the full 5 techs, but they had 5 guys on the line of scrimmage, 2 outside linebackers, and Abdul Carter was in predator mode right over the center, right over the nose tackle. And he got at least 2 plays where he was playing middle linebacker. So everyone cheer and throw babies into the air and be excited because you finally got what you wanted. Abdul Carter played Mike linebacker for Penn State, something that we've heard since he was a freshman. Scott says here he wanted to come back. Nobody's mad at you, Scott, but I just always, you paid for it, and I want you to be here on the channel to have your I don't want to say mea culpa because that makes me sound pretentious, but I can't think of anything else. He says, hey guys, didn't know Jaylen's taunting penalty was for giving the ball to his mom. My bad. That was a huge play that turned the game. Again, we're going to ask our guys, and this is a great reason to listen to the instant analysis after the game from Nate Bauer and from Greg Pickle, who are there. We'll ask them later, and we'll talk about it on the Tuesday show. We'll get you more of those answers for sure. That's just our interpretation from what we saw as well. Fitz, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just I continue to see Abdul Carter wrecking game plans. It's I don't know what else to tell you. He's Penn State's top candidate for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know how to say that otherwise. What he does is a big deal. Now, you said he played linebacker, and that's great. But if Denai is out any longer, and he did not look comfortable when he came back in on the first play of the second half, he came back in, right? Looked like a groin tweak or something like that, and then he did not play the rest of the game. Max Granville actually got in there, so I didn't see that. Interesting, and it's also a reminder that Penn State's not very deep at defensive end. We saw a lot of Smith Filbert tonight. Saw more more positive things from Amin Vanover tonight as well. So those guys have stepped up. But yeah, you're gonna need defensive ends, especially with that team coming in next weekend.
Yeah. So let's transition to talk about Ohio State a little bit. One last thing. I got to talk about this, and then we'll get into that. The way they're using Venga Ioane as a puller is awesome. I know you wanted them to throw the ball to him.
It was absolutely the right play by Bo. And I don't know, there was a guy out in front of Venga, so it wouldn't have happened, but just throw it to him once. Just let him do it. Let him have the fix.
In the middle of the field too. Not a big guy touchdown. Let's see how long he can run with the football.
Yeah, let's see how many people he can put into the ground if he runs the football. Yes. That's what I'm looking for. So really, It's so much fun to add that element to the game, and I think it helps everyone. It's going to help. I think it's going to help recruiting. To be honest with you, like I know
Yeah.
that you're obviously the guys that are recruiting now. Are they going to play for the same coordinator? Probably not, playing the odds. But like at the same time, elements will stay, and that's an element that I think can make things fun. Brought in Cooper Cousins to play left guard, and whenever Venga was asked to play in a different position, so I thought that was interesting in terms of where he was at compared to where JB Nelson is. I don't
Yeah.
recall seeing much of JB Nelson tonight, so
Yeah.
interesting there. I do think the offensive line in the first half, they're going to have a tape session, and I don't think they're going to like what they see. Penn State's offensive line was not particularly moving anyone in the first half, but again, that's something for the rewatch there. Yeah, it's very fun in terms of what's happening. I don't know what's happening with the Kansas State game, but I just got a text that's exciting too. So
Well, we'll get out of here in just 1 second. The poll that I wanted to talk about, I got like wildly excited, like nerd level excited about this. I want to set this up for it's just a little bit. One of the biggest problems I've had, and this is generally a problem, is you run the sweep play where you pull guys out in front and you get Nick Singleton out into space. Everyone wants them to pull and to have the crack toss or the crack pull or the pin and pull. But there's a reason pin or crack comes before pull and toss. You need to secure the edge of the defense to get around the edge of the defense. And usually that's a tight end. So for 2 years, Penn State's tight end struggled to do that. Mike Yurcich couldn't run outside for that reason. And they've had some issues with it this year. So what does Andy Kotelnicki do? He brings a 350-pound freight train for the crack on the crack toss, where that very first time that he came into motion, he down blocks. Now, they got lucky also because Wisconsin was trying to cut inside. So they got 2 for 1 on that, and they were able to spring, I think it was Nick Singleton, for a big run to the outside. Again, the creativity that Andy Kotelnicki has to do the same thing and to move the pieces in ways that make logical sense. It's not like they're doing something crazy and weird and different every single time. They've been pulling Venga Ioane the entire year. The difference is instead of pulling him all the way across the formation for securing the unblocked defender on the backside, you're using him at the point of attack, which is, I love that. I love that idea. Okay.
Loved it a little too much, I would say. But anyway, go on.
Yes, I did. But it's just like those are the things that gets my synapse firing of like, oh my gosh, that's a great counter to what you've already been doing, because guys are thinking one thing when you do that, and then you do something completely different. And that is how you actually get the defense out of position. So this is the last conversation we need to have, which is James Franklin is going to be asked, no doubt, about the injuries in this game. He's not going to talk about it. He's going to be asked about it later this week. He's not going to talk about it then. Mm-hmm. But we have to talk about it. So you're starting quarterback, you're starting right tackle, you're starting defensive end, and also A.J. Harris went down at the end of the game on that final drive. So those are 4 key players that went out in this game.
I had a theory on Harris, and I think he got hit where he didn't want to get hit. But that's
that what that was? Because it looked a lot like the groin thing, but I think you're right. It's very close. Groin and something else. They're also very close.
Luckily, they gave him a chance to get off the field when they reviewed it for essentially no reason, because that game, that was I don't have a clock on that game, but that was probably the fastest Penn State game I can remember in recent memory, especially with the rule changes and the commercials and the reviews and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
So I guess what do you anticipate, or how does this next wave of injuries change your opinion about everything going forward with this team?
I'm reading Greg Pickle's story right now, which is available on Blue White Illustrated. James Franklin said that he talked to Drew, and Drew said he couldn't go, and that's I want to say surprising, knowing that he was able to he's been able to gut through some things. But if he says he can't go and deny Dennis Sutton say he can't go, give him the benefit of the doubt that they're this is October in the Big Ten. You're going to be hurt to begin with, like you go into every game hurt. You're going to see that. But obviously Drew is the big one, that changes a lot going into next weekend. But Donka, I think, is right there as well. Deny is huge, especially when you take a look at how Ohio State likes to play and how defensive ends have been essential for the winner of that game for the last decade or so. I think all those matter a lot. Penn State is very back to being very banged up. They seem to have gotten through that initial wave of the early season injuries, and now all of a sudden you get back to it, and it's just not what you're looking for. And I think that has to do with reps. I think that has to do with being in tighter games than they'd like to be in, if that makes sense. And if you
a lot
more
more plays on guys.
Yeah.
In all of the games so far this year. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah. So we will see what happens. Drew looked to get landed on that sack late in the second quarter. He came back out in a big old Don Joy brace and gave it a go. Just said he wasn't able to go. So here's the thing. T. Frank and I hop on this show minutes after the game ends. So we don't have the post game coverage, and stay tuned to Blue White Illustrated for more from Greg and Nate. That's all I can say at that point.
Yeah. And again, James Franklin's press conference is going to be here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. The number one place to go to watch James Franklin's press conferences, all of them, is right here. So we're going to be done here in about 60 seconds. So you can just click over there. I'm going over there as well. Like, just so you know, what I do is when I'm done here, I go over there. I watch what he says. I work on some videos here. We get up the instant analysis from those guys. We give you all the post-game content. It's 11:56, but you're jacked up and wired. You're ready to go. You're going to be watching videos. You're hanging out, reading stuff, talking to people on the internet because Penn State won another close game. And as everyone said here in the chat, one that they haven't won recently. The feelings, the Tide feelings. Fitz, I agree with you, but the Tide feelings feel like they're shifting the other way with Penn State and their luck in these close games and the way they've played against these teams where Penn State fans feel like they don't win games in these spots. So that's going to do it for tonight. I have 5 or 6 things left on my rundown of post-game show notes. We're going to talk about that tomorrow morning when I do my film study. Again, we're going through every single play in this game, mostly offense and defense, to give you an idea of what's going on with that. Fitz.
One more. Enjoy it. I know it's frustrating. That's a 15-point win over a pretty decent team on the road in the Big Ten. Enjoy it. Next week is a different story. Next week is where that is the measuring stick in which everything is measured. I'm sorry, it's midnight. I don't have any play on words here. But enjoy the win if you're a Penn State fan, because that is a quality win and you have a 0 in your loss column, which at the end of the day is the big thing that matters when you're talking about 12 teams getting into a playoff. So you've gotten beyond the bourbon or whatever you poured after the game. Now it's time to circle back around and just kind of like breathe and enjoy it. So I would say that to everyone. And there hasn't been a bunch of complaining in the chat, which is great, because after the USC game, it was pretty testy there for a second, but coming back around and saying, enjoy the win. It was really awesome to see Penn State pivot and Penn State be resilient and Penn State do what they have to do, because at the end of the day, it's not how you win them. It's if you win them. And Penn State won for the 7th straight game.
Well, I've enjoyed this. This has been a fun time for me. I always love coming and talking football, no matter when. It's always nice after a win. Everyone, as you mentioned, is usually in a good mood, even though sometimes it's not as, as good as it should be after a win. But as you mentioned, the college football playoff, you need to keep winning, and they are at a hefty total of wins. We'll see how this all plays out down the stretch with all the things that just happened tonight. So for Sean Fitz, I'm Thomas Rankard. This is the Little Bat post-game show. We'll be back next week after the Ohio State game. Same place, different time. We'll be doing the same thing. I'm Thomas Rankard. Sean Fitz. We'll talk to you later.